Good evening. In one sense, today's meeting in Moscow between the leaders of Russia and Belarus, Presidents Putin and Lukashenko, was routine. But the timing gave it a sinister importance. The first anniversary of the Russian invasion is just a week away. Beyond that, there is an anticipated Russian spring offensive. So, will Mr. Putin persuade his old ally to join in the battle? So far, Mr. Lukashenko has stuck to the line that he will only attack if Belarus is attacked first. Russia used Belarus as one of its launch pads a year ago as a possible gateway to seizing Kyiv. Now, with that Russian spring offensive in the offing, tension is high on the border between the two countries. Our Europe editor, James Mates, reports now from Chernihiv, just a few miles from that crucial dividing line.
For all the heavy armour and precision weaponry of modern warfare, this is beginning to look a lot like World War I. Preparations to resist a new offensive look very like they did a century ago. Dig in, dig deep, ensure you can exact a heavy price. This is the border with Belarus, across which the Russians came a year ago, across which they could come again at any moment. If they do, they'll meet very different Ukrainian forces. A year ago, these men were civilians living routine lives. Now many have already been hardened by combat in the east. Their new military skills kept sharp with constant training. Do you think they'll come again? Of course, he said, and we will meet them. And do you think they'll break through again? And that doesn't really need translating. Most important of all, these men know what they're fighting for. Just behind the front lines, civilians have already seen and survived one Russian occupation when this land was overrun in the initial invasion. By the time it was recaptured, Nina, like so many of her neighbours, could retake possession of nothing more than a home reduced to rubble.
We barely got to the car when the attack started. As we were pulling away, I saw in the mirror that our dog was running to where we'd just been. At that moment, the missile hit our house and our dog. That was the last time I was here.
If Nina's trauma and the trauma of this village is not to be repeated, Belarus is going to have to be persuaded to stay out of this war. Ukraine's intelligence chiefs recognize that may not be easy. Are you surprised that Belarus has stayed out of this war, and do you think they might enter it at some point?
Ukraine's military intelligence have the fullest possible information about what's happening in Belarus. As we understand it, they will continue to support Russia but still refrain from joining the war. But we also understand how much Russian pressure they're under.
So not for one moment can they take their eyes off the border with Belarus. The fact these trenches can still be dug, that the ground remains unfrozen, that right across this battlefield is a sea of mud, is perhaps the best thing that's happened to Ukrainian defenders this winter. Normally, the ground will be frozen solid, perfect for armoured vehicles and for tanks, not during this warm winter. On a bleak corner of the northern front line, this anti-aircraft position sits amid muddy, unploughed fields that would ensnare any heavy vehicles. So these drone hunters watch the skies for the aerial attacks that have never let up. But until summer at least, attack at ground level seems less likely. And at the border itself, where the Ukrainians blew the bridge in the first hours of the war, the swampy marshland remains resolutely unfrozen and impassable. General Winter saved Russia against both Napoleon and Hitler. It's not helping them this time. James Mates, News at 10 on the northern front line.